In the early years after the Cold War, many policymakers in Washington and European capitals believed the world had settled into a predictable order. Western alliances dominated global finance. The US dollar sat at the center of international trade, and most major economies were deeply integrated into a system shaped by Western institutions. But quietly, across Eurasia, a different pattern has been forming. Not a formal military alliance, not a treaty organization like NATO, but a growing alignment of interests between four countries, often described as strategic challengers to the Western-led system: Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea. Together they represent vastly different political systems, economic structures, and regional priorities. Yet their cooperation has expanded in ways that are beginning to reshape global power dynamics. The question is not whether these countries are forming a traditional alliance. The question is whether their overlapping strategies are gradually creating a new geopolitical axis, an axis defined less by ideology and more by shared pressure from sanctions, strategic competition, and economic exclusion. The turning point for this shift began to accelerate in the past decade. Western sanctions against Russia intensified after the annexation of Crimea in 2014. Those sanctions expanded dramatically following the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Entire sectors of the Russian economy were cut off from Western financial markets. Energy exports faced price caps, and Russian banks were removed from key global payment systems. For decades, the assumption had been that economic isolation would weaken Moscow's global influence. Instead, it pushed Russia to deepen relationships elsewhere. China quickly became the most important partner. Energy trade between the two countries surged. Russian oil that once flowed toward Europe increasingly moved east toward Asian markets. Pipeline infrastructure expanded, and payment settlements between the two countries began shifting away from dollars toward national currencies. This change might sound technical, but it touches the foundation of global financial power. For nearly 80 years, international trade has largely been priced and settled in dollars. That system gives the United States enormous influence over sanctions enforcement and financial flows. When countries face restrictions within that system, they start searching for alternatives. Russia was not alone in that search. Iran had already spent years operating under heavy sanctions related to its nuclear program. Much of Iran's economy had been forced to function outside conventional Western financial networks. That experience made Iran unusually adaptable in restricted economic environments. Oil shipments moved through indirect routes. Payments were structured through alternative banking channels, and barter-style trade arrangements sometimes replaced traditional finance. In effect, Iran had already developed survival strategies that other sanctioned economies could study. Russia took notice. China also paid attention. Because Beijing faces its own long-term strategic concern. Dependence on financial infrastructure heavily influenced by the United States. China remains deeply connected to global markets. Its economy relies on trade with both Western and non-Western partners. But Beijing has gradually invested in parallel financial architecture. Its cross-border payment systems, its growing use of yuan-denominated energy trading, and its expansion of infrastructure investment across Eurasia. These initiatives do not replace the existing global financial system. Not yet, but they slowly reduce dependence on it. And that's where the emerging pattern becomes visible. Russia supplies energy. China provides manufacturing power and financial capacity. Iran controls critical geography across the Middle East. And North Korea, though economically isolated, contributes a different type of strategic leverage: military technology and weapons development. In recent years, intelligence reports and defense analysts have pointed to increasing military cooperation between Russia and North Korea. Particularly since the war in Ukraine intensified, North Korea possesses large stockpiles of conventional artillery ammunition. Russia, fighting a prolonged conflict, has significant demand for such supplies. The result has been a growing exchange of military resources and technology. Again, this does not look like a traditional alliance, but it represents a form of strategic cooperation shaped by shared isolation. And that cooperation extends beyond weapons. Transportation corridors across Eurasia are becoming more important. One example is the international North-South transport corridor linking Russia, Iran, and parts of South Asia. The goal is to move goods between Europe and Asia faster than traditional maritime routes, by combining rail, road, and sea connections through Iran's ports. This matters because trade routes are power. Whoever controls them influences supply chains, and supply chains influence economic resilience. If you're interested in how power, oil, and money shape the world behind the headlines, consider subscribing to Rise and Ruin: Power of Wealth. Because understanding these systems requires looking beyond the daily news cycle, the deeper story here is structural. Energy is one of the central pieces of this emerging alignment. Russia remains one of the world's largest oil and natural gas exporters. Iran holds some of the largest proven energy reserves on the planet, and China is the largest energy importer in the world. That combination naturally produces economic partnerships, even when geopolitical tensions complicate the picture. For example, despite Western sanctions, discounted Russian oil has continued flowing to Asian buyers. China and India have become major destinations. Those shipments help stabilize Russian energy revenue while supplying fast-growing Asian economies. Meanwhile, Iran has also increased oil exports in recent years, often through complex shipping arrangements that obscure the final destination. Energy markets adapt quickly, and global demand rarely disappears. It simply reroutes. But this alignment also reflects deeper economic pressure. Global debt levels have surged across many countries. Inflation shocks following the COVID-19 pandemic and the war in Ukraine strained public finances. Central banks raised interest rates to control prices. Investors became more sensitive to geopolitical risk. In that environment, access to energy supplies and trade routes becomes even more important. Countries that can secure resources and maintain alternative financial channels gain strategic flexibility. That is precisely what this emerging axis provides. Russia gains markets. China gains energy security. Iran gains strategic partners. North Korea gains technological and economic lifelines. At the same time, the Western alliance system remains enormously powerful. The United States and its allies still dominate global finance. The dollar remains the world's primary reserve currency, and institutions built after World War II continue to shape international trade. So the balance of power has not flipped, but it is shifting. What makes this shift unusual is that it's happening through networks rather than formal treaties. Trade agreements, infrastructure projects, military cooperation, energy deals. Each one individually may seem limited, but together they gradually create a parallel web of relationships. And that web becomes more valuable whenever sanctions, trade restrictions, or geopolitical crises intensify. In other words, pressure from one system encourages the growth of another. The long-term implications remain uncertain. Some analysts argue these partnerships are too fragile. The interests of Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea are not always aligned. Others believe shared opposition to Western pressure will continue pushing them closer together. History offers examples of both outcomes. Alliances can collapse under internal tensions, but they can also strengthen when external threats create common incentives. What is clear is that the global system is becoming more fragmented. Instead of one dominant economic order, multiple overlapping networks are emerging. Energy flows are being redirected. Financial infrastructure is diversifying. And geopolitical competition increasingly shapes trade patterns. These changes rarely appear dramatic in the moment. They unfold slowly. Through shipping routes, payment systems, and long-term supply contracts. But over time, those systems determine where power accumulates and who has the flexibility to respond when crises erupt. If this helped you see the bigger picture, take a moment to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Rise and Ruin, Power of Wealth for more documentaries on oil, power, and the forces shaping global finance. Because the most important shifts in global power rarely happen on battlefields alone. They happen inside the infrastructure that moves energy, the financial systems that settle trade, and the alliances that quietly reshape the architecture of the global economy.